Welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming by. We're going to do a beautiful seascape here with a sailing ship. We're going to cover all the details to create this wonderful oil composition. We're going to cover mixing of colors using the color wheel, just a simplified, quick 5-minute study on our color wheel, how we're going to get our colors onto our palette. We have a wax paper palette. These are the colors that we're going to use. So I cover the entirety of the color mixing for this painting, thin application of oil first, and then we go over with thicker paints toward the end of the painting for the distant mountains and the sailing ship. So we're going to have a really fun time going over all the details here. We'll get started in just a second. All right, so we just saw the finished painting. We're going to get right into the beginning of the process here of setting up our colors for our oil painting. It's always handy to have a color wheel. I think it can kind of give you a sort of a basis to work from with your colors. So I have numerous of these color wheels set up, and I use different primaries for the different color wheels. So if you can imagine, I start off with my primaries, red, yellow, and blue. Red, yellow, and blue, and then I take the color wheel and just keep mixing it out and make my secondary colors, orange, green, and violet, and then the tertiary colors, which are the blending of all of the complements of the secondary colors and the primary colors to the next level out on the color wheel. So basically, you can make one of these for any color combinations you want of your three primaries. So, there's cerulean blue. We'll use cerulean blue for this color combination, or the colors that we're going to use today. We'll use these three: the alizarin crimson, cerulean blue, and cadmium yellow. But you could also use French ultramarine blue instead of the cerulean blue. You can swap out any of the colors any way you want. You can take cadmium yellow and make it yellow ochre if you wanted to, or you could take the red and make it cadmium red instead of alizarin crimson. So it's up to you. You can make color wheels. These, I guess I would consider these just like reference notes for yourself. So you make some color wheels. You can create different color combinations. Again, a lot of fun. That's a lot of fun to do. And then it'll give you all kinds of variety of colors. Maybe certain paintings you're going to find, like seascapes, you might want to use, maybe cerulean blue or French ultramarine blue, and then other types of paintings like flower paintings or still life paintings, you might want to use Prussian blue or phthalo blue. So you can have fun with the colors, experiment, research colors a little bit at a time. Don't get overly anxious about color. I think the main point is to sort of keep things simple. So I'll always have my color chart across from me when I'm working, just as a reference point if I ever need to use it. And we'll start out and we'll just put out our colors. And we're going to do a simple seascape, as you saw, with some boats, sailing ships. So I'll get a little bit of the red, alizarin crimson, and then we're going to have yellow, cadmium yellow here. So we're going to make our color wheel in a sense, right on the paper here. Our wax paper. So wax paper is perfect for our water mixable oil colors. And again, I always mention water mixable oil paints by Winsor & Newton. Winsor & Newton has these artisan line of paints, water mixable. You can rinse your brushes off with water as you're working. You can clean up with soap and water. No solvents needed, no paint thinners, nothing like that. It's pretty much almost like working with watercolor paint, but it's a little thicker and obviously has oil in it. But the oil is not such that it will damage any upholstery or clothing or anything like that. And it washes up again with soap and water. How easy is that? So we have our red, our yellow, now our blue, cerulean blue. We're probably going to use a little more cerulean blue since it's going to be a seascape painting. And then we'll have our white. We'll put some white up here. Hopefully I'm in the picture. Okay, so good. Sometimes I forget and I put things outside of the camera. I can zoom in a little bit too. I think we can. That's good there, I guess. And then at this point, we might say to ourselves, let's add maybe an earthy kind of color. I'm going to add some burnt umber to this color wheel right here, just in case. Just in case we want to add some earthy kind of colors. We did use burnt sienna and or burnt umber, and I think I used burnt sienna and French ultramarine blue to prime my canvas, and it's dry now 100%. I did this about a week ago, so I primed the canvas with burnt sienna and French ultramarine blue, a mixture of those two, more burnt sienna than French ultramarine blue. And for that reason, I will add a little bit of French ultramarine blue to my color selection here because it's in this priming. And the same thing, I think I'll add a touch of burnt sienna. Okay, I'm not sure I'm seeing my burnt sienna. I might have run out. Let me take a look. Okay, I'm not going to worry about it now. Let's just get started here. Let's make a nice sky color. I'll have a few brushes. And a palette knife. So sometimes I'll use a palette knife, and then we have our goat hair brushes. These are natural brushes, natural hair brushes. You can use synthetic. Synthetic might be a little bit easier for cleanup, but this is what I've had for a number of years, so I just stick with these. And I just trim down the handles. I just cut down the handles with a saw just so that they're shorter. And that's about it. So we're going to just start with our sky color, and that's going to reflect right down in the water. So okay, so I'm going to start to mix in some blue. It's going to be a light blue sky. Maybe we'll have some French ultramarine blue in there too. Maybe a little bit of yellow in there. A little bit of burnt umber. A little bit of red. Okay, and I'll just set my brushes down over to the left over here for now, and I'll use paper towel to clean off my knife. So as you're mixing colors, you just want to make sure you have some paper towels. You clean off your knife as you're working, so you can sort of. I'm going to make up a violet color, which is a combination of French ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, alizarin crimson. And I just want to make a little bit of a purplish color. And maybe a little bit of this mixed into it too. Okay, and I would leave it marbly looking. I wouldn't overly mix it. We can even take some of that to there. If we want to make a green, maybe a little bit of a greenish blue, we'll take some of that yellow and blue. Kind of a grayish. And we're really working here, real life, so if things don't go always perfect, we don't have to worry about it. We're just trying to come up with some really good colors for our sky and water. And then we'll make some red over here, some more alizarin crimson, a little bit of white. Maybe a little bit of yellow. Just a little bit of a warmth, maybe a little more yellow. Maybe like an orangey red. Mix it around. See what... Probably more red I think would look better. More of a kind of a light, very light pinkish color. Yeah, I think that looks better. Just some colors to mix here to kind of get everything looking good. Maybe a touch of burnt umber here to have some grade down of that color there, maybe just a little bit like that. And you can even mix the colors around a little bit just for variety. All right, so you see I mix my colors. I get my predominantly the sky. And let's just get this on the palette. And we're going to make this a fun, quick study. It's a study, basically. And I'll mirror that color right down into the water. Now the reason I do that is because I've just mixed this one bit of color here, so I want to blend it between the sky and the water. And then when I mix my next color mix of blue, it's going to be a little different. It's not going to be exactly the same, so that this will keep everything mirroring back up and down in the painting. So you're going to have a nice color mix up here in the sky, and then the same colors blending right down into the water. Then we're going to take some more white and some more of that cerulean blue. So again, we're going to do the same process. Let's mix our cerulean blue, maybe a tiny bit of burnt umber just to gray it down a little bit. And let's start adding some of that in. And it's fun to work with the palette knife. You can get a lot of paint on your board quickly. And then we can also use the brush to blend the paint if we want. You can move the palette knife around any way you want to. You're the artist, you're going to enjoy the process of learning how to use a palette knife. And one of the really fun things about oil is you have plenty of time to work with your oils. So it's not going to be like watercolor. Yeah, it's going to dry quick. You have to do everything really fast and think ahead a lot. With oils like this, you have plenty of time. You can just start getting your paint onto your canvas board, and have fun with it. Take your time. You can layer things. Obviously, the layering effect. You always remember with your oil painting, it's really a simple kind of a method or technique that most all oil painters will agree. You're painting thin first. So you're going on thin first, and then as you're working on your painting, you build up thicker layers of paint on top of your thinner layers. So your first layers are very thin. You're almost just getting that first layer of paint on the color. Okay, and you can, again, mix and mingle your colors around. Maybe a little bit of a cloud effect or feel there with some that purple. Maybe we mix a little bit of burnt umber into the purple just to get more of a grayish color for the clouds, and you can certainly put a little bit of the cloud colors from up above down below here in the water. We're just mirroring the sky color down into the water. But here it doesn't have to be all. The cloud here in the sky is, you can see, more kind of solid. It's like a solid area of like that purplish grayed down purple with some burnt umber in there. But in the water it's not going to be that way because there's movement in the water, so there's going to be little bits of brokenness to the shape of the cloud. Just a little bit of, more or less, the tone and color down in the water from this cloud reflecting down into the water. And then I'll do the same thing. I'll do the same thing again. White, cerulean blue, maybe a little bit of yellow there. Let's see how that, some more cerulean blue, a little bit of yellow. I think if you're looking at your colors when you're mixing them and they look good, you're really going to be in a good place. Because especially here we're only using, well, we're using basically our primary colors, red, yellow, and blue. We did add two different blues here, but I don't think that's going to make any big effect on causing disharmony in a color mix as you're working on your painting. And then the burnt umber is the same thing. Burnt umber is almost like black, except it's not as dark as black. It doesn't have that, really, really dark tone to it, tonal value. So when you add in burnt umber, that again is not going to be something that's going to be unpleasant looking in your painting. So now I'm just going to continue to put this last bit of color into the painting. That's all about color. Color is so much fun. It's enjoyable to mix up these colors, and if we're using the color wheel concept of just maybe just starting out with our three primaries and mixing our colors from there, it really, you can't go wrong. And then we'll just so you can see I've got pretty much lots of beautiful color on here. The color of that summer sky, the water. And then what we're going to do next is, I'll take a quick break, and what we'll do next is we'll start to create a shoreline, and maybe we'll put in a boat or like a sailing ship and a shoreline, just to, the bulk of the work is done now, I think. As far as, we had to do a little bit of drawing to get our ship in, and maybe some shoreline effects, but for the most part, this is the real fun part, getting on that beautiful color. And you can okay, and again, this is a study. It might turn out to be a wonderful painting, and you'll say, I'm going to put this in a frame and hang it on the wall, or put it up in the studio, or, that's fine too. You'd be surprised. Sometimes you'll start out a painting and think it's going to be great and turn out wonderful, and next thing you know, you have some problems with it, and you don't wind up really, maybe saving it and putting it in your studio and kind of like showcasing it as something you hang up on the wall or you have out so you can look at it and kind of get encouraged. And then there's other times where you start out just doing like a study like we're doing here, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is really coming along fantastic. So far I'm really extremely pleased with the colors and the composition, which is just sky and water. We're going to go about 2/3 across, so the shoreline is going to be about here, like that. And then we're going to go from there, just putting in a ship and some shoreline, and I think that will be it. And we'll see how it turns out as we finish up here. And I see that I always mention too, this is you can always do a quick measurement for your shoreline so that you keep your shoreline even. So if you can imagine, I might just go, where is this looking pretty good? I think over here looks good. So this is about 3 1/4 inches. So I'm just going to come over here and say, okay, 3 1/4 inches up here. So it is pretty close. I had it pretty close when I made my first mark across here, for the most part. Okay, so that looks good. We have the shoreline kind of set up here, and we'll come back and we'll start putting in some thicker paint for our shoreline and our boat, sailing ship. All right, so we're going to get our sailing ship in and some shoreline, and I think we'll be really in good shape for this exercise. So I'm going to go into that kind of that pinkish color we were talking about before that we mixed up, which was alizarin crimson and some white paint, a little bit of burnt umber, and maybe this will be sort of like some feeling of sand over here, maybe on the right side. So I'll just get a little bit of a feeling of some, maybe a bit of shoreline here. Like that, just to, okay. And then I will use that same color just in a few spots here, very lightly blending it into the sky in certain places, not everywhere, just a little bit. I want that to be that color of the sand. I want a little bit of that color in the sky too as well. Kind of like a good rule to always follow is if you add some different color paint in one area of your painting, take that color and put it around the painting. Even if it's just a little bit, it'll make a world of difference versus just taking some of this sand kind of color, putting it down here and then not adding it anywhere else. That would sort of cause the painting to look maybe unpleasant looking, because it looks like someone might have smudged something on the painting, because it just it looks like a mark that's not relating to anything else on this painting. So if we have that in mind, that does really help a lot with color mixing on the canvas here. Okay, so we got that idea of, we added some sand color here, and we're just going to take that sand color and again mix it around a little bit. And then for the shoreline color, we might take some of that sand color and use that over here. And I'm just going to add a little bit of burnt umber to that, and a little bit of that purple too. So we're going to make kind of a purpley distant colors here. So I'm going to downplay maybe some of the features here. I'm not going to go and spend a ton of time with the distant hills here. I'm going to pretend this is open ocean out here. Maybe there's a little more land over here. So maybe I can take my palette knife and just put a little bit of land there. I'm kind of, right now, I've run out of room to turn my palette knife. See, it's hard for me. I actually don't have, I have a bunch of things in the way over here on the right side. Out of the picture, you can't really see that, but. So I'm just going to do that quick. See if I can get that bit of land there. And then I'll just smooth that out like that. All right, that's good. And then I always can take a brush and do a little bit of just some mixing like that. So you can kind of use your brush to smooth out some areas that you have. Like that. And maybe we'll make some shoreline color, which is kind of like a sand color like that, yellow, brown, and some white. Just some distant. I'm just putting a little bit. It's a thicker paint though. Now we're talking a little thicker paint because we went thin first and now the paint gets a little thicker. And that looks good. Maybe a little over here too, just to have some of that. Okay, I'll rinse off my brush. And I'm going to go back with my palette knife. And we'll just get in a simple sailing ship. And we'll make French ultramarine blue and some burnt umber. And I might need a little more burnt umber. So I'll put a little more burnt umber out here on my wax paper, palette paper. And you add what you need to. If you run out of a color, you just add in more colors. So I'll use a mixture of the red, yellow, burnt umber, blue. And I sort of add a little bit of white and green to that too. So you can kind of mix out some interesting colors like so. Leave it marbleized like that. I will use a brush to paint in the ship. I think we could use the palette knife as well to do some of the rigging and the sails. But again, we're doing a composition here, having fun. So I'll set my palette knife to the side for a second here, and maybe we'll get a smaller round brush here. All right, so I'll get my small round. This is a number 2 round. I'm going to pick up a lot of that paint. Remember, we were just saying a few minutes ago or so, we go on really thin with our sky wash and water. So the ocean and the sky very thin. And now we'll get a little thicker paint to do our ship, our sailing ship. And we're just going to do a simple ship in the distance here. And again, I use a dowel so that I can rest my hand on it. So I put the dowel across my area that I'm working, and then I rest so I hold my dowel like this on an angle, like this, if you can imagine, on an angle, so my hand's way up above the canvas, and then I can you can actually use your dowel, or you might have something else you can use, a rule, like an architect's ruler, engineer's ruler, anything like that that's, got some stability to it, and then you can use it and just keeps your hand from leaning into the oil on your canvas, your paint. So I'm going to start here and just Okay, so that's just the ship there. And then I will take those same colors and I just want to put a reflection in the water of that. Okay, so there's the reflection in the water. And then maybe I'll use some darker paint here just to have a little bit of a darker back here. Like that. And then you can do the same thing. I'll set my brush aside. I'll rinse off my brush. So I rinse off my brush and then I dry off the water. I put my brush aside. And we can use the same idea using something like a dowel, and then we'll have our palette knife. And this is the perfect time to use the palette knife because we're going to have some masts on this boat. So we'll just you just kind of get a little tiny bit of paint on the edge of your palette knife like that, just by tapping into the paint. Like that. And then you can rest however you want to do it. You just rest your hand. Maybe you don't have to use the dowel, but you see. And then what we'll do is we'll get one of our masts up here. Like that. Perfect. Like that. Another mast there. And then another mast over here, like so. And then I can come in on the other side over here like this, like that. And that should be fine. And then we'll get our brush again, our number 2 round brush. And you can just do any amount of fixing up you like to. And I will put some so I'm going to do a couple, just the sails here. And I'll mix up the colors, a little dark, a little light for the sails here. And maybe we'll again add a little bit of paint if you run out of something. I ran out of French ultramarine blue. Let me add a little more of that. I thought a good bit of dark would look nice on the boat to kind of give it a little more dark quality to it. So I think Nice thick dabs of paint. Okay. And then we're just going to do some of that reflection here in the water. And this is really pretty much complete. The only thing I would do is maybe I'll take my palette knife and clean off my palette knife again, either tissue, paper towel, and then I would get a little more of I'd use more of the, maybe some of that darker color we just made here. And then I would take it again and then just do a little tiny bit of, and I think there's some rigging here. Like that. So you can add a few bits of lines. And I don't think those lines, we would see that in the water. Those fine rigging lines, I don't think we would see that reflection in the water of that. And I think we're pretty good here. Maybe we can add maybe a couple darks here on the shoreline. Over here, closer to the and then once you get those darker darks in there like that, it doesn't matter if it's a little bit, like let's say messy, get something on there first. Get something on the canvas. And then we'll clean it up a little bit. So now we'll go back with our brush. The palette knife's really good because you can almost get a really thick application of oil paint onto your canvas real quickly. Whereas if you're trying to work with a brush, sometimes the brush, if you don't get it on there like on the first definite stroke of paint the correct way the first time, then it starts to blend in with the paint underneath this, and that's when we kind of lose those darks that we want to have here. So let's keep the darks. And then now we can touch up. See how we can just lift up anything that looks like it's not like we want to have a shoreline here. Like that. You can just, add some rolling hills a little bit. And I think that's fine. So I hope we had a great time here painting in oils. We started out with some really beautiful blue and greens and purples for our sky and our water, the sky reflecting down into the water. And then as we progressed, we just got in our distant shoreline here, about 1/3 up from the bottom. So 1/3 up from the bottom of the painting is our shoreline. that was pretty straightforward and simple. And then we put in our sailing ship and had a few details with that, and we just touched up a little bit of our shoreline. A pretty straightforward exercise composition here that we were completing, and I think this is good. I wouldn't go too much more with details. You could possibly add something in the foreground, maybe another boat or a figure or something like that, but let's keep this simple, and we'll come back, and before you know it, we'll create another beautiful painting. Maybe we'll do something out in the landscape. We'll do a landscape painting next. So now we're at the shore, and before you know it, we'll be out in the mountains or in the countryside painting a landscape painting. So that's on our next composition, our next study. Until we get together again, we'll see you very soon.